Okay, this is going to be our graphing quadratics notes. So we're going to graph the last of the functions that we talked about in Algebra 1. Okay, so here we go. A quadratic function, the graph of it is called a parabola. Okay, it has either an upward or downward, kind of the shape of a U. There are three forms when we talk about quadratics. Standard form, which is mostly what you'll see, ax squared plus bx plus c. Vertex form, a times equality x minus h plus k. And factored form, a times equality x minus p, x minus q. You'll notice they all have a's, and a's are going to help us out big time when we talk about quadratics and parabolas. Okay, so here's a lovely opening up parabola, and we're going to label all the points. So right here, this arrow is pointing to that point right there. It's on the x-axis, so that is what we call an x-intercept. My next arrow right here is pointing to that lowest point on the graph. It's either going to be the lowest point or the highest point, and that is called my vertex. Okay, that is called my vertex. Next, you'll see this arrow right here pointing to this dashed line. That dashed line will never be graphed in Desmos, but you'll always want to find it. Okay, it's called your axis of symmetry. And it's really important because that line cuts that graph right in half. You would fold it over that point and you see the same thing on both sides. Okay, so that arrow pointing the x-intercept. Here's another x-intercept. Okay, hit that x-axis. My last arrow right here is pointing to this point right here, which is intersecting my y-axis. So that means that is my y-intercept. On this graph over here, we're going to label what it is. We're going to talk about what it is and the coordinates that it hits. So my first arrow is right here, that top. Remember I said this point down here, which is my vertex, is either my lowest point or my highest point. In this example, it's my lowest. In this example, it's my highest. That's my vertex. It's my vertex. I'm going to get the coordinates of that point. So I go left 1, so it means I'm going to write -1, comma. I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're coordinates of my vertex. Next, this arrow right here, that point right there, that's at x. It's one of those x-intercepts. It lies on your x-axis. So I'm going to go left 1, 2, 3. So I went left, so it's -3, comma. I don't go up or down at all, so -3, comma 0. Next, we'll come right here. This black arrow points to this point right here. That is my y-intercept. That's where it hits my y-axis. So I stay. I don't go left or right. So I stay. So I put 0, comma, 1, 2, 3, and then up to 4. My next little arrow right here is pointing to this point. That's an x-intercept. Okay, my coordinates, I will write 1. So it means I went 1, and I didn't go up or down at all. So it's back at 0. Now, that lovely little line, that lovely arrow pointing to that line, again, that's your axis of symmetry. And the nice thing about your axis of symmetry is it's always going to be written as a line. So you're going to write x equals. To find the number that x equals, you go to your vertex, which is right here, or right here, depending on what you're talking about. I go to my vertex, and I go to my x coordinate of my vertex. Remember, x is always your first one. So my x equals -1 is my axis of symmetry. Now we're going to take a little bit of notes. So if A is positive, then the graph opens up. So it'll look like AU. If A is negative, the graph opens down, which sometimes you might hear me say it looks like an N. Okay, a U or an N. All quadratic functions have a vertex, which is that turning point. So if you look here, there's my vertex. I'm going down, I hit my vertex, and then I'm coming back up. Whereas this one, I'm coming up, I hit my vertex, and then I'm going down. That's my turning point. Quadratic graphs are symmetrical across the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry, and remember, it's always x equals at x coordinate of your vertex. A quadratic function crosses the x-axis only once. You can only have one y-intercept, but it can cross the x-axis twice, once, or no times, and that's okay. Twice, once, or no times. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of talk about what these are. It's not the best graph because we have some halves, but it'll be okay. My vertex. Is my vertex the top point, or do I have a bottom point? I don't have a bottom point, so it's my top point. So I'm going to come right in here and I'll put a point at my vertex right there. I need to write the coordinates. So I went right 1. So it means I'm going to go positive 1, then up 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to say 4.5. 4.5. As soon as I have my vertex, I immediately go my axis of symmetry. I always write x equals, remember, the x coordinate of your vertex, so x equals 1. After I go my x-intercept, I'm going to go ahead and go to my y-intercept, which is right there where it hits that y-axis. I don't go left or right at all, so I start with 0, comma, and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, comma, 4. There's my y-intercept. Last thing I have are my x-intercepts. How many times does my graph hit it? Once. And then twice. So the first one, -1, 0. And the second one is at 1, 2, 3, comma 0. We're just going to round to the nearest one. I'll make it easier. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to graph these next ones. And it doesn't matter what it looks like on the doesn't matter what the equation looks like. We're just going to plug it straight into Desmos, no matter what. All right, so we'll do this first one on the top first. So we're going to go to Desmos and we're going to type y, oh, make sure it's not capital, y equals 2 parentheses x minus 3, close my parenthesis, squared, and then minus 4. Now what you're going to see with Desmos is I don't have a graph over here, so we're actually not going to graph it, but we're going to use Desmos to find everything else. So A, Desmos doesn't give us an A, so remember A is either that first term or what's right in front of that parenthesis. So my A is 2. If A is positive, that means I know I'm going to open up. When you open up, you're always going to have a minimum. Always going to have a minimum. Okay, these next I'm going to go straight to Desmos. So I'm going to go my vertex first. Now I'm going to click on all the points that Desmos gives me. Okay, let's start with 0, 14. That is my y-intercept. It's where it crosses my y-axis. So 0, 14, that's my y-intercept. I'm going to unclick it because I'm done with that point. Next point I see right here. I have 2 points along that x-axis. Those are my x-intercepts. I'm going to put in exactly what Desmos tells me, 1.586, comma 0. And 4.414, comma 0. It's okay if they're ugly. Don't worry about it. Just put them in. My last point that Desmos gives me is always my turning point or my vertex, which is awesome that it gives you all these points. 3, -4. I'm done with that. The last piece that we need is my axis of symmetry. Remember, it's always x equals my x coordinate of my vertex, so x equals 3. There's my first example. Okay, let's try my next example. Okay, A, again, what's in front of that parentheses? So it's -2. So if it's negative, it means it's going to open down. And that means it's going to have a maximum when I put it in. So I'm going to type it into Desmos. Y equals -2 parentheses x, oops, x minus 3, close it, open a new one, x minus 2, close it. Okay, so it definitely opens down, which means I have a maximum. I'm gonna have to zoom out sometimes to be able to find everything that we need. And it's hard to see a little bit, so I'm gonna zoom in a little bit and move my graph up. Okay, 0, negative 12. There's that y-intercept. 0, negative 12. Go my x-intercepts for next. Okay, there's that first one. So 2, comma 0. And 3, comma 0 is my nice, pretty x-intercepts. My vertex, 2.5, comma 0.5. Again, just put in what Desmos gives us. Remember, axis is symmetry. X equals x coordinate my vertex, so 2.5. All right, last graph is in standard form. So we have an A, we have a B, and we have a C. A is always your coefficient of x squared. So in this case, it's 4. B is your coefficient of x, so that's negative 8. And C is my constant number by itself, so that is 1. A is positive, so it's going to open up, which means it's going to have a minimum. I'm going to go ahead and put it straight into Desmos. So y equals 4x squared minus 8x plus 1. Okay, put that into Desmos. Okay, let's go vertex first this time. Vertex lowest point since it opens up and it has a minimum. So my vertex is 1, negative 3. So my axis of symmetry is x equals 1. 2x intercepts again. So 0.134, comma 0. And 1.866, comma 0. Last thing, a y-intercept, 0, comma 1. Now you're going to do your practice, so you're going to do the same thing. You're going to label your vertex, axis of symmetry, y-intercepts, and x-intercepts.